mute.
All right.
I stay ready.
It's Busta Rhymes on Friday, kicking the ballistics on WRMS. Yo, I got a phone call from my dog. He wants some hoe cakes. I said, hoe well. Yo, Big Dick, you trying to get money here. WRMS, Taylor Soul, Saturday, y'all.
What up, y'all? It's a Saturday. It's been a minute, but we back up in it. What up to everyone? Welcome you to a wonderful Saturday afternoon. It's your host, Be Free. I'm back with the U Up crew. Let me see if they in the building. Let me start with the lady of the house, Dr. Knight Douglas.
I am in the building. It's a little chaotic out here in these streets, but happy holidays to everybody.
Down in them streets. Next, we got the man on the media scene, our media guru. We got brother JC Polk in the building. JC, you up?
Tis the season, and like them wolf pups would say, woo, let's go.
And last but not least, we got the man on the boards doing his thing, the super producer, brother D. Are you in the building? You up?
I'm always in the building, baby. Let's get it.
Man, we got something planned for you. So with no hesitation, let's start it off. We gonna talk about millennials versus Gen X and the difference in intimacy levels between these two demographics. And this was something that was quite scary to me, but I guess not. But we'll get more into detail. So let me pass it to I'm gonna pass it to brother JC Polk to kind of get us started on what's the source of this intimacy or lack thereof between these generations, or the difference between how they view intimacy. So, brother JC, you up? Talk to me.
I think it comes as really very, very elementary. I think when we start looking at comparing the two generations, or the two named generations, you compare what are the major differences. And the major differences for a millennial generation is someone who grew up not being disconnected from any type of, electronic. We talk about Gen X. We recognize that some of those Gen Xers actually still remember what it meant to actually have to warm up a bottle versus actually just having something already, put in the microwave and ready to go. Some of them know what the formula is. Some of them know what organic baby food is. And I think when you start looking at those differences, there's all these little things that play a role into our mid-adult and adult lives, which both generations are in right now. And one of the things that came out is that when you look at all those different elements that play a role in that, one of the things that also has to be discussed is the level of or lack of intimacy in their relationships. For a lot of us on this call, we grew up in a time before there was a dating app that would go and allow me to do a clearinghouse of people who I actually want to take a step to approach. For others, actually turns into where we had to go out and take chances and take some of those L, almost like a baseball player. So part of that is can we expect, and do we already know that there are intimacy differences between those two generations, and what will we predict or expect those to be? I turn that over to the group. What do you think? Do you think they'll be the same? Can they be the same? Or do you think that they actually it's a non-issue?
No, it's definitely an issue. It's more of, we're in the age of technology. Because we're in the age of technology, you can have a relationship with somebody without even seeing them or even touching them. But I definitely feel like there's a difference because, we got these sex robots, and these robots, people do not like or will prefer to not have the intimate connection with a human being versus having an intimate connection with a robot. And I think that's definitely problematic because there's something to say about the human connection. And intimacy doesn't always translate into actually having a romantic relationship with somebody. Intimacy can just be a conversation. Intimacy can just be a hug. Intimacy can just be a look. Intimacy can just be energy exchange between two people, and not necessarily sexual energy, but it can just be just love or just admiration for somebody. So I think this generation is in trouble with trying to figure out, trying to distinguish between the two. And if they can't distinguish between the two, then we're in a world of trouble.
But wait a minute, Doc. Let me ask you this though: do we need to change the shift of what intimacy is? I know y'all seen that Facebook portal, right? You seen the new device Facebook put out, where it essentially is taking technology to another level. Where at one point in time, all I wanted to do was get on the phone, listen to Foxy 107 Quiet Storm, talk to the girl on the phone to be intimate with her. The technology increased, well, now I can go take that to FaceTime, and now it's going another step where I'm taking my social platform where I met her at, and then now I can see her on a regular basis, and if I want to get real grown, I can have an intimate type of phone connection with her there, like visually. Is that worth giving any credence to?
I think yes and no. I mean, again, there's technology that stands in between you two. So how can you really feel a connection with somebody if you don't ever have a physical, if you don't ever see them, or you don't have like a touch? I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's nothing like having a physical connection with somebody and just exchanging. I mean, I personally don't feel like you can exchange energy through the phone or through FaceTime or through the computer. I think you definitely have to be in the same space of that person.
But I want to say this: with this generation, and I look at how many, I guess, social media outlets they use, they're pretty much knowing people personally. Like you look at Snapchat and Facebook and Live and Instagram, and they're posting like themselves and social settings and doing stuff. I really think like people feel like, hey, we can be intimate utilizing these things because that's what they know. Like so many people starting to put their personal stuff on there. Like you can kind of get to know somebody on the surface about something, but I do think it's a problem. I think it does hurt socializing because one thing I see a problem for a lot of now work younger folks who are on these sites, just the interaction and how they interact is totally different. I think that art is being lost. It's so caught up in this popular culture, and I think the socializing skills are lost. So it's kind of even changing around, I guess, what you would define as intimacy. You know, we're just in a world of, hey,
but that's what I'm saying. Like
out on this app.
But that's what I'm saying. Like
it might change the definition.
Well, again, what I'm saying is, first of all, I think that word intimacy has been so saturated with like physical, like sex and eroticy and stuff like that. Whereas we don't look at it for what it really is, and it's not about just a romantic relationship with somebody. I mean, a conversation can be intimate, but it can be amongst friends, because intimate to me equates more to like a private feeling. You know what I mean? Like if you have like private thoughts, like say you want to talk to somebody about your upbringing or something that you've never spoken to somebody about, and you share that information with a friend. To me, that's an intimate conversation, because that's like digging into your personal feelings about, something specific that's private to you. And so it's not so much as changing the definition of intimacy, but acknowledging that intimacy is much more than just what we have confined it to be. So
There's some significant differences between millennials and Gen X when we start talking about intimacy and sex. But I'll start with a couple of different things that kind of lead to that. So was reading this a I guess it was a PowerPoint study that was presented by The Sound, and they talked about the difference between millennials and Gen X. Like millennials have a longer youth versus the short youth, meaning that the millennials are they resulted in new developmental life stages, where Generation X they're a relatively smaller generation, so they have it's less culturally important. Where millennials is highly culturally important, which if you live just in the RTP area, you can figure that out. Just go to a company that was established for millennials, and you can see the difference there. But it also talks about things like maturity, and how millennials are aspiring to be mature, but Generation X people are adjusting to be mature because millennials are more motivated to be mature, but millennials are now parent. I mean, Gen X is now parents, so they are adjusting. And then you get down to the intimacy and how they look at it, and certain things millennials have done is different. Like they've adapted more of a casual culture where there is no commitment, where there are more friends with benefits, where technology does replace how they communicate even in relationships. Where Gen X, they are more tuned around relationships. And a lot of that, in my own belief, when you get away from the study and you think about how I perceive it, the perception is that Gen X was that group that kind of learned both technology and the old way. So we learned from baby boomers, but at the same
Yeah.
time, we were adjusting to the transition into what millennials have, which they would consider as a given. So we kind of carry both values in a sense. And when you see what the difference is between the intimacy, there's not as big of a gap as people would suggest, because there are a lot of Generation X people that use the same methods and have the same ideology behind casual relationships and no commitment just as much as millennials do. And I think that gets missed in this conversation.
No, I can definitely agree with you that I think that's one of the benefits. That's why I was talking about being able, you got one generation that doesn't even know what it means to live without a microwave. You got another generation that actually remembers when they got their first microwave,
Absolutely.
right? Like what it meant to have, 43 channels versus only having 3 channels, but can live in both, right? And so I think what you find, you hit it right on the head, where you got one who's like, I don't know what it means to read a map. Right? Or I've heard about those things called phone booths or pagers, or you know what I mean? Like I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
I think in terms of that intimacy, bringing it back to that original question, I think there definitely is a difference. I think, it's like for me to go to my son, and we've seen the whole, whether it's a meme or something on a sitcom, where for me to go to my son is they sit here and say, hey, look, let me show you what I used to do. I used to sit on this phone to the wall that winds up, I'm talking to her for all night long with the radio playing in the background I can't skip tracks. I got to listen to the DJ. That's my intimacy with a girl in high school. What's yours? And his is going to be something that is, I was on Snap and I showed her this, right? Like that could be it. But I think that also, that could possibly leave us to sex recession. But we don't even have to get into that until maybe the next break.
Which the next break is coming up anyway, so we'll go into it.
On that note,
Yeah, the host is currently having some technical difficulties, everybody. So I'll transition it in. Super producer, which is myself, go ahead, kick that funky music, all that other good stuff that Be Free would say. We're gonna fix Be Free's mic in the break. We'll be back right after this, everybody. Stay tuned.